Hello, my name is Kerrioth, and today we're just going to do a quick little look at the newer snap-fit models that are coming to Warhammer 40k. So, we have this chap here, the Myphitic Blight-Hauler. We have Lord Felthius and his collection of friends. Old Tentacle McGee there with the... let's face it, it looks like he's got a dick on his head. But we'll ignore that. There's also the Redemptor Dreadnought right here. And finally, the Primaris Aggressors. So what we're going to do is just take a quick look at the sprues now that they've been very helpfully put onto the Warhammer community site, and I guess rather than do like a 1 out of 10, 10 out of 10 thing, we're just going to take a look at the components and kind of see what is the potential for things like conversions. Is it worth the reduced cost to pick these up? As in, like, do you think they'd be just as customizable? Do we think that the sprues actually look good enough, or shall we say simple enough for someone new to the game to really get into them, and yet complicated enough that someone who is a veteran to the game could essentially do whatever the hell they liked with them? Let's do it. So this is for the Myphitic Blight-Hauler, which is still one of the best and worst names that they've ever come up with, and I have to admit, for this one, I'm actually surprised there's as many parts as there are. Now, I know it's probably going to sound a little bit weird, but the model itself, there's not much in the way of posable stuff on there. There's not much in the way of stuff that you can move around, just by the nature of what it is. I actually thought that it would be a little bit simpler than it is currently. However, looking at that, I'm kind of glad that it's not a little bit more simple, because there's a few things on there that kind of strike me as being particularly handy. So the main body of this, I mean, I guess you want, technically a very small tank. It's got treads. What more do you want? Like things like the body and stuff, there's not a huge amount you could really do. There's some joins in some interesting places. You could separate that stuff out if you wanted to use those front guards of the wheels for something else, for instance. But actually, having said that, no. It looks to me like the connections between the front guards and the very front of the model are slim enough that if you're careful, if you've got a nice sharp blade, you should be able to get in there and get those off. So the potential for conversion-y bits there actually doesn't look too bad. You've got no chance for the rest of the body, though. If you look at the two halves of the sort of rear part of the tank, you're not gonna. I don't think you're gonna get much out of that. It's altogether too thick, and the detail is very well done, but I don't think there's a huge amount that you could do in terms of chopping that particular bit up for parts. So this bit and this bit. The weapons and the exhaust and stuff actually are not too bad. Again, there's enough of a gap there that I think you could probably get a little bit of a cut in, and you could do some funky conversions with this. In fact, the main body of it could be a good platform of conversions. Things like being able to have those tracks separate, I really like that. I'm glad that that's the case, because again, that could be used for multiple stuff. Overall, that does look nice and simple to put together, but I'm also quite impressed that actually there's a fair amount that if you grabbed one of these to create something else, like create your own version of a Blight-Hauler, or even wanted to do some sort of crazy conversion to nerdlify something else, there seems to be quite a bit of reusable stuff in there. Like, I can easily see that appearing on, you know, other models with a bit of green stuff work. Same thing with these guards and the exhausts, and yeah, the tracks as well. I have to admit, on first glance, I was like, wait, how does that fit together? But actually, I don't think it's too complicated at all. It looks pretty easy. So yeah, I do like the look of that one. I think there's a bit of potential there for messing about with the stuff that's on this, which is always nice to see. So let's move on to Lord Felthius and his lot. With his amazing happy grin. Look at that guy. Look at that. Isn't he not the happiest person you've ever seen? Okay, so these are going to be a lot more difficult to work with, I think. I'm not surprised by any means. I kind of expected that they would be. Stuff like this, where you've got the feet directly moulded into the scenery that will go on the base, that will make it a bit more difficult to convert parts, like convert models using parts from this. Although I am happy to see that, especially for things like the plague thing, I've forgotten the name of it now, that thing, I'm quite happy to see that that seems to just be its own part. That is just an arm with that gun attached to it, so that has got potential use elsewhere. Same thing with these, with like other aspects of this. There's kind of enough separate that I think you could do some cool stuff with this. Like primarily, I'm thinking stuff like using this box to convert some Blight-Lord Terminators. You know, just instead of using them as a named thing or a named Lord and Retinue, being able to mess about with them and basically have like a budget Terminator squad. It does look like that is a possibility. Something like just as a personal thing from me, in both of those sprues there, we seem to have separate heads, which is very nice, to be honest. That's a big deal to me because I like being able to do just little touches like head swaps and stuff. I think can really like bring an army and make it your own, and it looks like that is something that is feasible. I mean, even there where the head is attached to, I think by the look of it, it is technically attached to that, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to take it off and replace it with something else, so that's kind of cool. Things like Lord Felthius himself, that's going to be a little bit trickier to convert because most of the model is already there, but then again, they are reduced from, you know, normal pricing for a reason, and that's kind of the whole point, really. It's make things easier for everyone else. But again, things like the head, the arm, there's reusable stuff in these, and if you're planning on mixing and matching, it'll be a little bit trickier, but I mean, I can see a good couple of arms here that can be used elsewhere. Once again, we've got the option to swap out the head if we wanted to, and there's nice little touches like the little nurgling and stuff that's not attached to anything, so it looks like there is a fair bit of potential with this particular kit, with these guys, to perhaps mix and match a little bit with other kits, or go to town with some green stuff, or even just a box of normal Chaos Terminators. You might come out with something a little bit different, a little bit unique, and it might not be too tricky. The bodies, they'll be a little bit tricky to deal with, but the rest of the stuff, like the heads and the arms and things, it looks like there's a fair amount you could do there, so that's good to see. I like that. Now, the Redemptor Dreadnought, I think, I'm looking forward to having a look at these because, yeah, I was going to say, because I have a little bit of a concern that it's going to be very, very static, and that the pose that we see there is the pose that you will get. It does look like that's the case. The legs are, I mean, they're set in one position, which is a little bit disappointing, but then again, as I say, it's reduced price and it's snap fit, so that's really the whole point. But it would have been nice to see a little bit more posability. However, looking at those, and where's the back of them? Yeah, looking at the legs, you could do a very popular conversion for the, I say conversion, I suppose technically, a popular mess about that you could do with the Redemptor Dreadnought from Betrayal at Calth was to chop one of the legs, or even both legs, off at the knee joint, and then reposition them to make it look like it was running, because then you could move the arms, you know, you could position the arms such that it looked a bit more in motion, a bit less static. It might be a little tricky to do, looking at the two parts of the legs there, but I think there is potential to do that. You would have to go at that, I reckon, with a saw, as opposed to being able to just sort of give it a bit of a slice. I seem to remember the plastic on the Betrayal at Calth Contemptor was a little bit thin, and I was able to do it with a hobby knife, but this might, I feel like it's a little bit more substantial. At least if you tried to snap the legs together first and then do it, I think you'd have a tough time with it. But yeah, I think it might be doable, but it might be a little bit more tricky than it is with the Contemptor. The rest of it, nice and simple, nice and easy, and I feel like they haven't really done any favours to the model with the positioning of the arms, if I'm honest, because I'm not seeing anything on these sprues that suggest, mind you, that little arc sort of implies that there's going to be a specific way that sits, although it might be that with a little bit of cutting, a little bit of filing down, you might actually be able to pose the arms a bit differently. That would be nice. That would be good. I don't think you'd be able to like lever the arm out particularly easy without getting some green stuff involved, but even small things like having that arm rotated so the fist is a little behind it would do wonders to make the model look a little less static. And I mean, looking at it from this angle, you could cut away there. You could cut away there, and you could reposition one or both of the legs if you wanted to make it a little bit more interesting. So yeah, and that's not too bad. And that, I mean, for a model of that size with that many weapons, I have to say that the simplicity of these sprues. I mean, what have we got? We've got like 4 parts per sprue. Yeah, it is. It's 4 parts per sprue. I mean, 12 parts total for a model of that size and complexity. That is not bad. That is really not bad. I think they've done a decent job with this kit. Because apart from the static nature of it, it doesn't look like it'd be some sort of snap fit effort. Instead, it looks pretty good. So, yeah, I'm actually quite impressed with that one, to be honest. It will require a little bit more work, but I'm just impressed in how they managed to squash that down into, into such a usable small number of sprues. Especially for new people, that's going to make it way easier. Finally, we have these guys, we have the Aggressors. So I actually really like the pose of the Aggressors. I have to admit, even the ones that I wasn't too sure about, I'm now quite liking. There's still an element of mystery as to what exactly are they doing, but again, I think they've done a decent job with them. The potential for converting these, actually, it looks not too bad. Just when you look at that sprue, that is a lot of stuff going on right there. That is actually way more. There's way more happening there than I thought would be happening. Which, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it might be a little bit more complex for the new player, for people who are approaching it for the first time and want like a big badass unit. This might be a little bit intimidating. Although, it's fairly clear as to what's what. And yeah, I have to admit, I think this is not too bad. Again, there's enough potential here for messing about with different parts. It might be snap fit, but there's little elements here and there where I think you could actually mess with these and come out with something kind of unique to you. Especially, I mean, again, going back to the comment about just doing a head swap and how that can make things your own. The heads are completely separate. It looks like the weapons are separate. You could, in fact, the way that's done, I don't see any reason as to why you couldn't convert the weapon arms by chopping a bit off the front and sticking something else on there, provided you actually do a legal weapon swap and don't just stick whatever you want on. But I don't see any reason as to why you wouldn't be able to achieve that quite easily. It looks a little bit more intimidating at first glance, but I think with these ones, without cutting down severely on options, there's not a huge amount else they could do. But yeah, I don't think they've done too bad a job with this. I don't think they've done too bad a job, and given the poses that they've come out with, I think the number of parts is actually is a little bit more intimidating than the others, but it's also fairly reasonable, I think, for the models themselves, and it does mean that more experienced people, I think, could do a little bit more with these if they wanted to, which is definitely, this is the thing, it's definitely worth considering when you're looking at trying to save a little bit of money here and there. If you want to buy something like this kit and then just mess with it a little bit to make it your own, you're paying a bit less for it, which is never really a bad thing, let's be honest. I think overall, I'm pretty impressed with these. I'm really impressed with Felthius and his lot, just because I didn't expect them to be anywhere near as customizable as it looks like they are. Obviously, they're not as customizable as normal Terminators, but there is definite potential there. The Blight-Hauler, I think they've done a great job with that kit. That is like, I think that and the Redemptor are the clearest kind of, oh, so that's where that goes kind of sprue kits I've ever seen. So I think they've done a decent job there. And again, I think there's a lot of potential for mucking about with this thing to make it how you make it look how you want it to look, or utilise the parts for other units. So overall, not a bad job there, Games Workshop. The question is, what did you think? Do you think those kits look decent? Do you think they look a little bit too complicated in some cases? Or do you think they're alright? Would you pick one up, even if you don't mess with it, just to have a more economical option for that unit? Or would you prefer to just buy the full thing? To be honest, I'm kind of torn. I think I prefer the full thing. At the same time, when the price is lower, the price is lower. And if you can still mess with it, then it might be worth just putting in a little bit more legwork. But I leave it to you. Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. There's the usual stuff, like the video if you like it, subscribe, Patreon, all that garbage, and there's the videos to watch if you want to as well. I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.